Established quorum. To my right, the Vice Chair, Councilman Domb. To my left, Councilman Greenlee. To his left, Councilman Quiñones-Sánchez. Will the clerk read the title of the bill?
Bill number 180648, an ordinance amending Title 9, Chapter 600 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Service and Other Businesses to establish a license and related requirements for tire dealers, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. For the record, Bill 180700, lead in schools, will be held to the call of the chair and the bill sponsor. I want to call the administration up, Nick Esposito, the Director of Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet, and Rebecca Swanson, who worked with us as we get a handle on the issues of trash and dumping. One of the issues that has been plaguing the city has been the dumping of tires. I normally think that we've taken care of everything, and I did not realize that we don't have an official tire license, and we don't keep a handle on folks who sell tire licenses to ensure that they have contractors with dumpers. And I'm sure many of us feel that all of that transaction ends up on the streets and in the neighborhoods, and ultimately the city of Philadelphia is responsible. Over the years, the tire roundup, which the administration could speak to, has been one of the efforts that we have tried to promote to help us with the tires. We hope that today's bill and ultimately implementation and enforcement will help us with this massive problem. So I'll leave it to Nick Esposito and Rebecca, who both worked with my office with this over the last 6 months, to start off, and then we have a couple of community residents who are going to weigh in. So I don't know who wants to start, Rick or Nick or Rebecca.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Quiñones-Sánchez and members of the committee. My name is Nick Esposito, and I'm the Director of the Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet in the Managing Director's Office. I'm here to offer testimony to Bill number 180648, sponsored by Chairwoman Quiñones-Sánchez, regarding amending Title 9, Chapter 600 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Service and Other Businesses to establish a license and related requirements for tire dealers under all certain terms and conditions. Illegal tire dumping continues to be one of the most frequent reports of illegal dumping that I receive from residents, businesses, and my city colleagues. Aside from being neighborhood eyesores, tires are made of very dangerous chemicals, and when dumped can act as menacing mosquito breeding grounds when filled with water. Through the Cabinet's research, we discovered 3 challenges that are key in regulating tire dumping. Number 1, due to the environmental impact of tires, it is imperative that we know who is producing waste tires and how they are disposing of these waste tires. Number 2, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection currently requires all tire dealers to maintain manifests of recycled tires to comply with state regulation on tire disposal. But without a manifest on the tires that are brought into the shop through sale or repair, which most point-of-sale systems already record, it is a challenge to monitor if a tire shop is responsibly disposing of all tires. And number 3, a waste hauler cannot haul tires in the state of PA without a license from the PA DEP. However, enforcing and tracking who is hauling their waste in the city of Philadelphia is a challenge due to the lack of records and awareness on behalf of the tire dealers. This tire dealer license is critical because it allows licenses and inspections to collect data on who is handling waste tires, how they are disposing, and creates a record of the amount of tires handled by a facility and who did the disposal. The Cabinet is working very hard to improve our arrest and prosecution of illegal tire dumpers, and we know that we will not arrest, but we do know that we'll not arrest our way out of this issue. We need better regulation of the industry, and that's exactly what this license achieves. In closing, the Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet supports this bill and that it is a tool to better manage the collection and disposal of tires. We thank the Chairwoman for introducing this bill, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have after Rebecca.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Quiñones-Sánchez and members of the committee. My name is Rebecca Swanson. I'm the Planning Director for the Department of Licenses and Inspections. I am here to provide testimony on Bill number 180648, which, if enacted, will amend Section 9600 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Service and Other Businesses, to establish a license and related requirements for tire dealers. As Nick testified, illegal tire dumping is a pervasive problem throughout the city, and at least part of the problem can be attributed to unscrupulous tire dealers who dump used tires on vacant lots and in other unpermitted areas, creating a fire hazard and a public safety risk. Allan and I is therefore happy to support the Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet in its effort to address this issue. L&I will create a new tire dealer license, which must be obtained by all businesses that deal in the purchase or sale of new or used tires. The license will be renewable annually at a cost of $300 per year, and it will require the licensee to provide L&I with certain information about the operation of its business. The information required in the license application will be information that any legitimate tire business already has at its fingertips, including contact information, zoning approval, and certification of fire code compliance. The license also requires that the licensee disclose the name of the waste hauler with whom it has a contract to dispose of its waste tires. Haulers of waste tires must be licensed by the state, and it is expected that tire dealers are already using a properly licensed waste hauler. The licensee must list this waste hauler on the application, and eventually the online application will contain an automatic drop-down box pre-populated with all state licensed waste haulers. In addition to creating this new license, the bill proposes a requirement that tire dealers must keep a manifest of all tires that come into the business and all tires that go out of the business, whether through sale or as waste. Again, any legitimate tire business has some, if not all, of this information already easily accessible. The state DEP already requires tire dealers to maintain a list of disposed tires. Now the dealer will have to expand that list to include acquired and sold tires. To speak briefly about the operational rollout, the proposed bill will become effective after the completion of L&I's Eclipse project, which is scheduled to wrap up in June 2019. At that time, L&I will create an online application for this license, which all applicants will be strongly encouraged to use. In the meantime, the Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet will be doing outreach to businesses to inform them of the upcoming change, and as with all new licenses, a grace period will be granted to ensure that all those wishing to come into compliance are given sufficient time to do so. We believe that this bill will be effective in holding all tire dealers in the city to a basic level of accountability to which they should have already been adhering. We wish to thank both the Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet and Councilwoman Quiñones-Sánchez for their leadership on this issue. Thank you for the opportunity to present the department's testimony. Happy to answer any questions.
Real quickly, just some stuff for the record, and maybe Nick can speak to this. How does this align with some of the short dumping initiatives that you're undertaking right now?
Yes, so when we put forth our short-term list of recommendations through the Zero Waste and Litter Action Plan, again, this kind of goes to that thinking that we do need to tighten up our enforcement, and we need to enforce more on these issues, and having this kind of paper trail that we can create through who is hauling these tires out of these shops, and then also understanding how many tires are coming in and how many tires are going out is going to really lead to build that body of evidence for greater enforcement. And then on the other side, as I stated here, I think we're all reasonably can understand is, we can't just arrest our way out of the problem. We do have to kind of further regulate how these operations are doing business, creating better, monitoring of what's happening. And so that's the kind of follow-up to what our goals are on the Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet, that kind of more holistic view of the immediate enforcement, but those longer-term kind of changes on how the industry operates.
As part of your litter index, have you identified all of the major tire dumping locations? Does that exist?
So we rely on 311. We can filter out complaints. We've recently made some really great advances in how we collect data on 311, where we're filtering out what we call heavy short dumps, and we're asking 311 respondents to be able to get that, and it's giving us a way better piece of information. It was all litter and waste was all in one, or dumping was in one place. This litter index, we didn't do this the first year, but we changed a little bit on the app, and now with the litter rating, the inspectors are also putting down what they're seeing for what kind of litter. So if they see tires, we'll be able to kind of see, where we saw some bad dumping, if it was a 3 or a 4, which are the worst side of the scale in the ratings, and then what kind of materials are we seeing. So we'll have more data on that in January.
Okay. So do we have a sense of how many folks would be eligible for this license based on your business scan, Rebecca?
We don't, because a lot of them are zoned and they have the auto-related uses, but they don't not all of them necessarily bring in or get rid of tires. So that's really the license, but we know where these places are, and we know who's in charge of them and who we can go after if there is an issue.
Okay. Now, the issue with the tire hauler in the state, so you're saying you're going to pre-populate that in the Eclipse program so we know who's an authorized state hauler?
Yes, so we have the list from the state of who's already approved, and this actually is going to tie back to another bill that was passed last year about construction debris, because we know that's another part of the short dumping issue, that when you get a building permit for a certain level of work, of alterations or new construction work, you're going to have to do the same thing. You're going to have to list your waste hauler, and there'll be a drop-down box on the permit application to say, this is who's going to be taking my construction debris away. It's going to be the same exact thing for this license. It'll be a drop-down. And that's why we're really going to push if it's just if they're doing the paper application, they're going to have to handwrite it in, obviously, but we're pushing everyone online when Eclipse is finished, and the hope is that way, even if they don't necessarily know who they should hire, they'll have a list of somebody that they can choose from.
Who's authorized.
Yeah.
Just to clarify for the record, if you're dealing in a tire, you're already required to keep certain information, right? So we're not really asking a whole lot above what they currently keep as part of this program, or what's the difference between what they're required to do right now versus what we're going to be doing here?
So for the license application, everything that they're going to need for the application, they already should have. They should be using a licensed waste hauler already. They already have to have zoning approval to operate as an auto-related business. They already have their certification for their fire suppression systems and things like that. So really, then there's the manifest, and Nick can speak a little bit about what the DEP requires already at the state level.
Yeah, so the DEP already requires manifests of recycling, so that you went and recycled these tires and how you disposed of them. If you were to go get your tires changed, you would look on your bill, and there's usually a $2 fee that they're also supposed to collect, and that goes towards the recycling programs in the state. What we identified as a problem is that although the DEP gets that information, the fact that they weren't getting information on the upfront of what was actually coming in, you couldn't kind of compare both of those to say, okay, you brought in 100 tires this week and the sales that you did, but you only recycled 50, where's the other 50? Right. And we have talked with the DEP on this, and they are very excited about this bill as well, and they would be conducting joint inspections with L&I to ask for both pieces of information. Another piece too is that they also have trouble just knowing who to inspect, and sometimes it's complaint driven. They really don't have the greatest landscape of what tire dealers look like in the city of Philadelphia, so this information will be also very beneficial for them.
And then in terms of enforcement, for folks that we, through enforcement efforts, find out that they're dumping, what are we foreseeing?
Well, one thing we've already even shown is we've already had some cases where we've been working through environmental crimes in the police department with people who are dumping tires and then being able to trace those people back to certain shops. So it kind of goes both ways. If we see that there's a shop in a neighborhood that we're getting complaints on, we can go inspect. If it doesn't look like numbers are lining up, we also know who their hauler is, and then we can go investigate the hauler. Vice versa, if we catch a hauler in the act, or we know that they're dumping, and then we can tie them back to where they have, we know where they have contracts, where they showed up on these permits, we can go to those tire shops and further investigate. And again, it's setting the tone that, we're not letting this slip through the cracks anymore. We're going to really connect this paper trail and have some oversight.
The chair recognizes that Councilman Tollenberger has joined us, and I will recognize Councilman Domb for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and good afternoon. I just want to make sure I understand what we're planning on passing. And in the bill, it says there'll be a tire manifest for each location that sells, purchases, or obtains in or disposed of any tires. Every tire has an identification number in each tire?
So, like a specific identification number?
So I believe they do.
Well, here's my question.
I don't think they trace back to someone.
Let's say I drive through an underpass in the Councilwoman Sanchez's district and I see 8 tires under the underpass. Are we able to identify 10 tires? Are we able to identify those tires by who last purchased them?
Well, no, to my knowledge, there's been ideas kicked around on that before of trying to have like identifying markers on tires. There are certain markers on tires, but actually, as we studied the industry, the tires can move throughout the city onto like maybe 3 or 4 different, you have new tires that came in, they end up in a shop, and now they're being sold as used tires. That used tire is then used again, and then maybe it blows out, and then another shop repairs it, and they ultimately take it in. From what our research has shown historically, it has been very, very hard to just track that actual object back to one person. That's why the paper trail, if we can, if we had cameras and we caught somebody who dumped those tires, we'd be able to piece back where they came from.
So if I'm a resident of the city and I see 10 tires dumped in one of the district council person's district, what should I do? Who should I call?
So we actually have this on Clean PHL for the cabinet. So if you're seeing it in action, you see somebody dumping, we do recommend people to call 911. If you see them after the fact, we call 311 and report through. We are starting to have better information sharing. So if there seems like an investigation is warranted, we can get someone out before the cleanup happens to do an investigation. But most times they're getting cleaned up. But again, it's all recorded. So as we see a spot that's being hit over and over again, now that we have more investigative capacity, we can monitor those spots better, possibly if we can actually catch someone in the act or know that might be a place where we need to do more surveillance.
Are people dumping tires because it's too expensive to do it the right way? Or are they just lazy to bring them to the right location?
So I think it's a mix. I think we see this with even the construction debris, is that there's more outlets in the city of Philadelphia to take construction debris. Tires, I will admit, is a challenge of where they go. There's some tire recyclers within the region. We've also had conversations with them to try to, as something like this comes on and they can see the amount of business they can do, there could be places where they can maybe do pickups, there could be drop-off points, and then they could be transported out to, as far as I understand, I don't think that there's any recyclers in the city of Philadelphia. They do need to be transported out. But when you're not using a registered hauler who has that information, who knows what they're doing and is monitored by the state, if it's just somebody with a truck who's trying to make a quick buck, that's what's happening with tires.
So when a tire dealer has a whole bunch of old tires, they send them to a recycler, is that what occurs?
Yep.
Yes.
And then these tires are recycled to produce new tires, or what happens?
No. Sometimes they're shredded and they're turned into what they would call like aggregate, so they could use it for like building projects. They've even used it in like roads. They've used it to make playground equipment or like the playground surfaces. And then in some instances, if the market's bad and they don't have anything to do with, they can shred them and actually just send them to like an incinerator where they're
some of the tires we could probably put in some of the potholes we have. They're so big.
we can get very creative if we have all this material.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Domb. Councilman Kenyatta Johnson.
Well, yeah. Thank you, Nick,
Thank you.
for your work on the Zero Waste Litter campaign and being supportive of our efforts to address this specific issue in Southwest Philadelphia. And I have to get my good friend, Councilman Domb, out to the second councilman of the district, specifically Southwest Philadelphia, where he'll ride in the back of Allan Avenue, where the trolley turns and he won't see 10 tires, he may see 50 tires. And so it's a different experience, but it's been a problem in that part of my district for a significant period of time. So I do thank you and I want to thank Rebecca Swanson as well from License Inspections for supporting this ordinance. I want to know how we're going to go about, so when we catch the person who's been doing this dumping, after we do some good due diligence, surveillance, and investigative work, what happens? Like, what are the penalties? How can we don't want people to go out of business, but if you continue to dump tires illegally in the city of Philadelphia, you shouldn't be in business because it brings down the quality of life in neighborhoods that this illegal dumping is taking place. And so we need to send a strong message to those who don't want to take the time, like in the construction industry, and take the debris to a dumping site and let them know that if you won't do business the right way here in the city of Philadelphia, we have zero tolerance for illegal dumping. Like, what's going to be our new approach to make this effective?
So I want to thank you also for your leadership and everything down in Southwest. The neighborhood litter plan has been very well received, and we're working through it. And I couldn't agree with that point more. So with, again, the establishment of the environmental crimes unit back in the major crimes of the police department was a huge step forward. That was a thing that the cabinet lobbied for and that we have successfully achieved. We have enforcement meetings every month through the cabinet where that unit will actually be in the room with the DA's office, sharing information, tracking cases through. In 2017, I mean, we almost were batting 1,000 basically on prosecutions.
So I want to back up because my staff will be very interested in learning that there's an environmental enforcement unit inside the Philadelphia Police Department, as well as the district attorney is addressing this issue from a law enforcement standpoint, because when we invited the district attorney's office out to our meeting in Southwest, they weren't really focused on enforcement and prosecuting people. They were more along the lines of, I think the representative wanted to create more green space in Southwest as a way to address the issue. And the advocates in Southwest said, no, we want these individuals to be prosecuted and their businesses shut down because they're bringing down the quality of life of our neighborhoods. And so this is very good information that you're providing, and my staff will follow up with you to make sure that we have that representative that's a part of the Philadelphia Police Department Environmental Crimes Unit to come out and talk to the neighbors, and whatever unit that's a part of the district attorney's office that deals with prosecuting those individuals to also come out to participate. So I do want to just thank the two of you, because I think the key component also is just the enforcement. And we know legally people have a right to run their businesses, so I know from L&I's standpoint, when we have like these chop shops and auto shops in Southwest Philadelphia, oftentimes we have to go through a court process, and the neighbors just want you to just go in and just shut them down because how they're operating. But I'm more in enforcement mode now, right? And try to figure out what are all the tools available, but making this official through this ordinance regarding those who are licensed to sell tires, I think is a step in the right direction. So I just wanted to, thank you for your advocacy, and then Nick will also follow up on that other point as well regarding enforcement.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Councilman Tonnenberger?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I was just looking at the bill with you, and I thank you for your leadership on this and your steadfast testimony on trying to resolve this. I think I may have told you this before. I'm a former ground supervisor at Friends Hospital, and short dumping gets under my skin real fast, and I don't have any tolerance. And I guess the question is, any fines attached to the bill that you see, or what are your recommendations?
Yes, so I mean, the fines that we are pursuing, especially with more investigative powers that we can go through the criminal prosecution in the DA's office, is, the fines were increased from last year through Councilman Green's bill for $1,000 for the first offense, $2,000 or $1,500 for the second, $2,000 for the third. There is a statute also in our books on 10-700 in our code and under penalties for when it's use of a vehicle and we can prove that use of a vehicle had happened. That is a $5,000 fine that we can pursue, and if there's different levels of it. There's M3, M2, M1, so misdemeanor 3, misdemeanor 2, misdemeanor 1. When it gets to misdemeanor 1, that means there was priors or the severity of the crime. There can be the case made for vehicle forfeiture. So those are a couple of the things we are looking for the actual pursuit of the people that are dumping the tires. I can turn it over to Rebecca for more of the fines on a tire dealer through this license that isn't working.
So in addition, we believe that the criminal prosecution is going to be the most effective, because once you put one person in jail for this or give them a large criminal penalty, that's the word's going to get out. But we do think that there is a piece of civil enforcement. So if we have evidence, whether from the police department or from Nick's group, that someone is dumping and we can trace it back to either a waste hauler or a business, we can revoke their tire dealer license, and we could also explore a cease operations of the business itself. All of these are subject to a safety inspection, a fire inspection annually, anyway, as an auto-related use. But if we believe that they are engaged in illegal activity, that could be grounds for cease operations.
The business stop order, that's in addition to a actual fine or in lieu of, or?
Well, we would prosecute them, the law department would take them to court, and something they could ask the judge for is a cease operations, saying you're no longer allowed to operate, but we could also ask for financial penalties as well that are laid out in the administrative code.
Is there any wiggle room in the sense that maybe the operator, even though he or she is responsible for the total operation, can say, hey, my employee was way out of line, they're wrong, they should be fined or something, or I'll pay the fine, but I don't want to lose my business? I mean, is there like a little area in the beginning of the bill?
Oh yeah, there's always
Okay.
It's the, facts of each case would be, if we are doing a prosecution through the law department for civil penalties, that would come out, and there would always be that type of discussion with the judge.
One last question. Have these fines been implemented now already? Or these will come forward with this licensure?
Well, the civil fines that are set forth in the administrative code for a class 1, 2, or 3 offense, they're across the board. They're for any type of code violation that is
Okay.
prosecuted through the law department. The criminal penalties, have they been have you guys used those yet?
Yeah, so we are in the process right now, especially since the unit and having better evidence that we're doing of having some of our first cases go forward. So in the new kind of paradigm, I would say, working with environmental crimes, we haven't had it, it takes a little while for it to go through the criminal justice system.
Sure.
In 2017, a lot of the cases that we did, some ended in fines. Some of the fines were before the fines were increased. We also, they utilize in the district attorney's office diversions. So we've had people go and put in 16 to 24 hours of community service with the Community Life Improvement Program, cleaning up a lot and seeing how the other half live. So we do that as well.
How long have these fines been in place?
So the fine's worth $300 in 10700 for, would be like littering and dumping. Again, the fines are different. There's a state level fine for if there's if it's use of a vehicle, so that's kind of a different class. A lot of these are for if you couldn't prove that it was a vehicle, but you knew that the person dumped. Now the fines are, as I said, $1,000 for the first offense, $1,500 for the second, $2,000 for the third that were increased. That was
and they're relatively new, those fines?
In 2017, I believe that those were increased.
2017,
yes.
Okay. Do you have any sense if they're working, or we don't know yet?
So we've yet to have that full prosecution, and again, through the DA's office, there are different levels of how they prosecute it. The biggest thing is just making sure that they get charged correctly and they're in, and they go through the process, and the judges are informed of what we're trying to do. So we haven't had that big ticket fine yet, but we are hoping for it. So
Thank you very much. Madam
You're
Chair,
welcome,
thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Domb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a couple other quick questions. Is there any value to these tires, like if do people get paid for bringing tires to a recyclable, or do you have to actually pay for them to take them?
So that, from my understanding, there is disposal fee. So you are usually paying for the disposal to the company that's doing the recycling and the disposal of it. There isn't a company that's paying to take in tires that then they're turning into another product.
So has any other city figured out a way to utilize these tires in a productive way to create a value?
So, as coming from the business sector as you have, with how markets kind of fluctuate when there's demand for a material. So, if there was a company that had a really good line on creating surface playground material, that would be, a good business that they can run and probably run a successful. I'm sure that even if they were making money off of that, they'd still want to charge for the disposal fees just to cover those costs. Other cities that we've seen have really, again, we were influenced by other cities that have done enforcement similar to this. Through the network of Keep Philadelphia Beautiful. We were at a conference, and there's some counties in Florida that have bad tire dumping issues, and really what they turned to was more of the enforcement. They have their own version of an environmental crimes unit and are trying to do a lot of the monitoring and the dumping. The creative reuse is always something that we're looking at, and especially economic reuse. And hopefully, and this is what we do believe on the Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet, is we can show this many businesses with this quantity of tires it could attract. There have been a few businesses that have approached that had, ideas on how to process tires, but they have, not really come to fruition in the area of any new capacity. But this could spur that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you know how much it costs us per tire when we get rid of it?
I believe. I have to check with Streets Department. I believe it's somewhere in the ballpark of around $5 a tire, I want to say, somewhere in there. That's what
I know the commissioner just came in. Do you mind coming up for a minute? Just want to get a sense of. Do you know how much it costs? She needs you on the microphone, I'm sorry. In tons? You mean we're collecting tons? It's a lot of zeros.
Good afternoon, Keith Warren, Deputy Streets Commissioner for Sanitation. The per ton disposal rate, I believe, is around $103. That's off the top of my head.
How many do we collect when we do the tire roundup?
An average of 70 tons,
17 tons?
70.
70 tons.
Yes.
Do we take them at our disposal places, our drop-off centers?
We take them in individual use quantities. So to say,
So I can
each
bring
resident
in
can
two?
bring 2 tires twice a week, 4 tires.
Okay, so they are allowed in all our drop-on centers?
Yes,
Okay, for personal use?
for personal use, yes.
Okay. Anything else? You good? Okay. We're good. Thank you, Commissioner. Sorry, put you on the spot there.
No problem. I'm sorry. I apologize for arriving late.
If we have any more questions, you have another one? No. Okay, any other questions? No, we have some testimony. Then I'm going to call our witnesses, Ray Gant, Ray of Hope, and Steve Horton, and then Ms. Ruth Brichette. Thank you to the panel. We'll be finishing up shortly. As Ray comes to the podium, Ray has been an incredible partner to us in the 7th, although I know he does things citywide with helping us with cleanups and stuff, and one of our biggest frustrations is dumping all over, so I wanted to have him come in. You can grab the mic, say your name for the record, and then.
Yes. My name is Raymond Gant. I'm I'm Vice President and co-founder of the Ray of Hope Project.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Testify.
okay. No, I'm just here today to address what it is that we do out on the streets of Philadelphia every day. And at some point, I've reached out to each and every one of you council people that's sitting at this table of the work that we've been doing throughout the city of Philadelphia for almost 16 years. Ms. Sanchez, Councilwoman Sanchez is more aware of it because we're in her district with a lot of what we do, but what we do, we go all over the city to do. And we see the illegal tires, illegal dump tires that's throughout the city of Philadelphia. One of the issues that we've been looking at with the illegal dump tires is that there needs to be more surveillance in some of these hotspot areas that's in the city, the way you know that people are coming to, because just like, we sitting here having a conversation today, strategizing what people are doing, other people are sitting somewhere strategizing how they can find isolated spots to go dump these tires at, and that's what they do. And so we need to be able to catch them when they out there. And you got some real hot spots that's in the city of Philadelphia that really need some camera surveillance in those neighborhoods and communities. I think one of the other things that would make it more helpful to what it is that we do, because our organization be out boots on the ground at some point of maybe 3-4 times a week doing cleanups throughout the community with volunteers, is that after we do the cleanups and we call it in, the trash is picked up, but the tires that we done rounded up are still sitting there. So what happens with that is that here come the illegal tire dumpers again. They just compound more tires on top of the tires that we done already gathered up. Now what happens in this situation, the trash would be taken, but the tires would remain, So, in my organization, we feel as though if there was more surveillance in some of these here hot spots, that we could, apprehend some of these here culprits. Not just with a fine, because, you see fines haven't even worked. They see the fines up, and when you go in illegal dumping areas and they sit there and they still dump and they laughing, because there's no real repercussion behind what it is that they doing, I think people's license at some point need to be revoked. I think people need to have their business licenses revoked for a certain amount of time as well. And then that way there'll be a strong message that will be sent out, to what's going on with the illegal dumping issue. Another thing that we've seen in areas that we've been working in, that where this here problem occurs at some point, the neighbors and people in the community begin to embrace it after they see that, somebody's out there that care about what's really going on with the quality of life in their neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, for all you do. Steve?
Come on.
Go ahead.
I think you could just talk.
Yeah, let me borrow that. Yeah. No, I think it's on, right?
Just talking.
Yes. Good afternoon, Councilwoman and members of the committee. My name is Steve Horton. Thanks for bringing this issue to bear. I'm with the Richmond Corridor Association, but also work closely with the Ray of Hope Project and have previous experience working with small businesses. This issue is very close to my heart because, like many of you in this group, we know those sites. If it's South 25th Street, if it's 2nd Street, if it's Richmond and Tioga, those locations that are real continue to be a chronic problem for all of us. And any way we can address that through both regulatory enforcement, but also making sure that, again, as others have said, that there's essentially a penalty to pay if there's not compliance. People need to understand the responsibilities to go with that. And each and every way that we can do that, not only through this legislation, but really through the process of really making sure that we're helping neighbors and basically working with the quality of life. It's up to us to do that. I've, like many of you on the panel, have been there on the front line from the inception. The Tire Roundup has been a citizen effort in partnership with the city to deal with some of that, but we've really got to get to the heart of the problem, which is the people that are indeed looking, out there, unfortunately taking advantage of these obscure sites. There's a bigger market issue that I think some of the previous panelists talked about, like how can we find other users of the materials? But the most important thing is immediate, is making sure that we deal with the problems that we see out our front door every day. And each and every one of us, really in an ongoing basis, one of the things I would hope that there would be kind of a citizen monitoring initiative to keep an eye on tires and other illegal dumps on a regular basis. Surveillance is desperately needed in many ways. There's been some talk about that, and there's technologies out there that can be used, lighting, a lot of other preventative measures, but also, again, holding those responsible. Because I've been on 25th Street, I've been on 2nd Street, I've been at Richmond and Tioga, and those spots are chronically being hit. Great partners with the city agencies that can work with us on that, but we've got to get to those ultimately responsible. And I'll answer any other questions you may have. Thank you for your time.
Councilman Tollenberg?
Madam Chair, thank you. It's more of a statement than a question, but there might be a question involved in this. I may need you at the tail end. Not only are tires unsightly, they take up a lot of space, but they're also a health hazard.
Absolutely.
Because they're actually a giant breeding ground for
Correct.
mosquitoes.
Correct.
The water that accumulates, particularly in a very wet summer like this one,
Absolutely.
and I'd have to say most summers have a fair amount of rain and the water accumulates in there, it's just a perfect place for mosquitoes to hatch. And there's no more deadly insect in our realm than a mosquito, who can transmit a lot of different diseases. So I guess my question to you is, the tires that you see, how long do they generally stay in one place before they're removed either by the city or how long do they stay with where they're at?
Right, you're good. Right, and I'll go.
Well, being that I am a frequent user of 311 and some of the city agencies, on the better half of the tires, they get picked up as quickly as possible, that can be possibly done through, the time and the effort that the city agencies have
Okay.
been doing.
So
I would say anywhere sometime from a week
Okay.
to 2 weeks, or sometimes it'd be a day or a couple of days. It varies. It varies itself. But what happens is that in these areas, because urban community neighborhoods are suffering the most from this here,
Sure.
from this here situation. So what happens is that in the isolated areas they get hit regular. So when it just recently we had some tires cleaned up in Frankfurt, and then boom, a few days later here it is back again. You know what I mean? The way the tires are back in there. So we just got to stay on it as much as possible and discourage the people that's dumping the tires.
I mean, I think you bring up a real good point about the health issue, because with Zika and West Nile and all the other stuff that's out there, I mean, it's a real concern. You know, even the volunteers, making sure they're properly protected, that are out there slinging the tires in the back of a truck. Last year, we got the health department involved in co-promoting the streets department annual tire roundup, because they understood this, you know, this growing crisis that's been happening out there. There are chronic spots, though, that are obscure that do last quite a bit of time, because literally they're camouflaged. So you'll come across sites that you'll never believe. I mean, the 25th Street or the 2nd Streets are obvious ones, or Tioga Street. But the other spots, and I've seen them, and there's several that, you know, I'm aware of right now that we're working with various partners on to get removed, that, again, these folks get so savvy, they'll find obscure spots, and there have been places where they've had to be essentially almost excavated from piles of debris that are left for countless months.
Absolutely.
So the good news is we're getting the bulk of them off the street. The bad news is those spots that are chronic are constantly a battle. It literally is from day to day, week to week.
The one disease you left out has always been historically prevalent in Philadelphia is malaria.
Absolutely.
Malaria has been here from the beginning of time. When the city receives them, to the best of your knowledge, what do they do with them, the tires?
Well, I know they collect them, and again, the streets department staff know better than I how they dispose of them, and, you know, the deputy commissioner was talking about that earlier, but for the citizens themselves and the annual tire roundup, and again, if we can get our hands around the regulatory side, the licensing side,
Okay.
and really holding those accountable, then if they're going to be always going to be some cracks in the system. If you can increase the incentivization of the citizens as well, so that they can pick up, hopefully it's just crumbs, after we've really dealt with a bigger problem like that too.
Very good. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, before we wrap up, I just wanted to echo on the testimony that if we don't take such an aggressive approach as totally revoking a business's license, then I believe the work that we're doing is for naught. And that's simply from the fact that they know we're going to call and get these sites cleaned up, Keith. It's very frustrating. I know we had a spot in Cobb's Creek, right off of 70th Street, 70th and Cobb's Creek Parkway, where Councilman Domb, we're talking about 150, 200 tires easy, right? Dumped in the lot. We organized out there with the community advocates. City comes, we do a massive effort, get rid of the tires, and then a month or two later, they right back. And I'm sure, because a lot of times streets departments, they may get a bad rap when we out in the community saying we could be doing more, but I know because we do so much cleaning in certain areas, they know where all the hot spots are. And so I think at some point in time, we may have to have a massive effort, right, to specifically, and this ordinance will help it, go after those, like a stealth movement, and like really all hands on deck, investigative approach, and really catch 4, 5, 6 folks and make a real example out of them where you can never do business. I'm not trying to hear that your employee did it and you didn't know about it. Well, you should have thought about that when you hired that employee. You should have made it part of the policy. If you get caught illegal dumping and you work for my company, like, you have to be a part of that accountability process. But I think that's the only way we're going to get change at the end of the day. Because you have to feel it in your pocket, dollars and cents, or the prosecution standpoint in terms of, like, maybe this person have to spend a few days away because they're bringing down the quality of life of neighborhoods, primarily in poor neighborhoods. And there's an environmental component because our dumping primarily, again, Cobb's Creek, go in the back of Eastwick, where Cormer used to own land at, right, where there's no lights and it's just totally dark. And I went on a tour and the neighbors just pointed out, here go all the dump spots. And I know we talk about civilians monitoring dumping, but a lot of that dumping happens at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, where cops aren't out and about and there's nobody watching, and you just find those secluded areas to dump. So thank you, too, for stepping up to the plate. But this is more so for my streets department, Ellen and I, the litter cabinet, all of us working together as a unit, and thank Maria as well for stepping up on this issue, because we can't be under siege in our own neighborhoods with people just bringing down the quality of our lives through illegal dumping of tires.
Yep. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for coming. Thank you for
very
coming
much
down.
for your time.
We have Ruth Burchett, and Councilman Domb has asked that Nick Esposito come back. He has a question for him. Councilman Domb, you want to ask your question before I listen to Burchett? Thank you.
I have thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have a challenge for you, Nick.
Okay.
I just went on the internet under Google, and I said, what do you do with old tires? And what is the value? And they tell me that other areas are paying $1 to $5 per tire, paying for it. So we need to find the company that will be willing to pay for it and get them somewhere in the Philadelphia area, because that would be an incentive for people to actually pick up the tires and bring them to that center and get the money for them, or that company will go bring them. So there are other areas in the country that people are getting money for these used tires.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to have those conversations. And in business attraction, we've already seen the Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet they see the signs on the city
Right.
that we want to do the better stuff with our waste. So if those companies want to get attracted here, I'd love to bring them.
I'm going to give you the challenge, but I'm happy to work with you to try to figure that out.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ruth. You're our final testifier.
Thank you. Hi. My name is Ruth Burchett. I'm founder of Heritage Community Development Corporation in North Philadelphia and also president of Heritage Homeowners Association. I am very happy to see this effort, and I really want to see more teeth in it, quite frankly, because over our 30-year history, we have cleaned many vacant lots using summer youth employment workers and have cleared tires as well. We have participated with the Tire Roundup program, and in fact, the $500 doesn't seem like much money, but it is and has been very helpful to our elder food cupboard, and that we were able to use the dollars for transportation and paying gas for the trucks and all. But I would tell you that the Tire Roundup program is very strenuous. It's very hard. You have to have protective gear. We have encountered tires with maggots and just all kinds of things in them. And also, I think the most egregious thing that I've encountered is a proprietor of Jones Auto Repair, whatever, in the 2600 block of West Huntingdon Street, who, as we were clearing the huge vacant lot across the street from his business, he thanked us and said, "Thank you for clearing the tires away. Now we have room to put more there." And so we reported him, but there are people that have that attitude in Philadelphia about zoning. And I agree with Councilman Kenyatta Johnson about having a zero tolerance. In the third section on page 4, under license and inspection, the area number 5, where it talks about willful violations, I would like to see the word suspension deleted from this bill and leave revoke in there. I also would like to see the inclusion of a per tire fine for violators in this. And then when you look at in section 3 under license requirements also, D at the top of page 4 says that they'll provide supporting documentation available to the department upon request. I would like to see an automated system that their record keeping has to be uploaded into on a monthly basis, or even perhaps even more frequently. I believe that the Philadelphia Office of Technology should be consulted to consider that. And so it's not a passive, you can keep the records and then we'll come and look at the records when we want. But it's an actual real-time accounting of the location of these tires. I think also, I can attest to the fact that the efforts of the Streets Department, particularly the sanitation unit, Commissioner Williams, and also Deputy Commissioner Warren have been instrumental in helping us deal with this issue in the 1900 block of North Hamburger Street, which is a back street between 23rd and Krosky Street. And for decades, I mean decades, it's to the point where people who have lived in the neighborhood over 50 years will say, we'll never be able to end this, who have me now doing research to try and privatize the street, a two-way street, literally, to avoid people coming in and doing the short dumping. Also, the health department, I've called upon them to come and deal with the fact that we don't just have mosquitoes that come out around after it begins to get darker after 8 o'clock, but also all throughout the day, the mosquitoes with the black and white legs. And so they came out and put the mosquito trap there. They left it for days, and they came back and determined that it was not the West Nile problem. But citizens, everyday citizens, are making efforts to try and maintain a particular quality of life. And even myself, I purchased a machine that's supposed to kill mosquitoes within an acre area. But it wasn't working, and I discovered it's because there are tires that are dumped on Hamburger Street. And so I ask you, if you would, to do everything you can to put teeth into this and go after the bad guys. There are people who repeatedly short dump in our community, and the fines and the penalties, they dwarf in comparison to them doing and dumping things or taking care of this in a legal manner, and I think it's problematic. I would say that this big problem is also an opportunity for enterprise. I am very committed to youth employment, and I believe that we can do that on a year-round basis if we take a problem like this, as Councilman Domb alluded to, and view it as an opportunity for our young people to gather the tires and also create a mechanism for them to even monitor as well. And I think that can be benefit all over the city. But thank you for this, and I hope that if this isn't strong, if this isn't strengthened, it's not going to solve the problem at all with short dumping.
Thank you, Ms. Burchett. I just want, for the record, all the fines are in another section of the code, so there are pretty hefty fines that were updated in 2017, which is why they don't need to be in this bill. And definitely we'll take your feedback as we create a list. We've never had a tire license, so we don't even have a list yet. When we get that list, that we have more public discussions as the program gets initiated in 2019. But thank you so much for all your work in the community. Thank you for coming here today. Yep. Thank you. We need one more minute to get Tollenberger back. This concludes the public hearing of the Committee on License and Inspections. We will now go into our public meeting. The chair recognizes the vice chair, Councilman Domb, for a motion on Bill 180648.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move that Bill number 180648 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Seeing none, the Bill 180648 will be moved out of this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to allow first reading at our next session. Thank you, everyone, for your participation today. This concludes the meeting of the Committee on License and Inspections. For the record, Councilman Kenyatta Johnson wants to report it, voting aye. Thank you.